This does not surprise me at all. If anything, it's kind of depressing that a young man's manager could betray him faster than previously expected. And it might show that the driver academy you chose to align yourself with may not actually care about you, unless you come with certain things to help back up your case. It's becoming increasingly clear that Alpine's F1 team is shedding its Renault identity fast. Even the most recent testing livery no longer features any Alpine blue. It's only carbon fibre and then the pink of their main sponsor BWT. Seriously, why can't we just go back to the old testing livery we had when Oscar Piastri was knocking around? That was amazing! But anyway, I believe that Alpine's going through a little bit of a transformation aside from its driver lineup, which might mean that we could be seeing a little bit more silver come next season, 2026. Not just from the fact that Mercedes is going to be their new power unit supplier, but also for the fact that I still believe they are going to rebadge themselves as high-tech. But that's not the main topic of today's video. What I'm talking about here is that whole thing with Jack Doohan, this could be resolved or decided even sooner than people expected, even sooner than Miami. The mastermind behind all of these changes as of late at this team appears to be Flavio Briatore. Although Oliver Oaks is the official team principal, the strategic decision seems to be dictated by the Italian overseer installed by Renault. Because some people might have noticed yesterday when Alpine went testing, there were no signs of Castrol branding on Gasly's helmet or anything on the team's testing car. Well, that was for good reason, because today it was announced that the Italian fuel supplier ENI, formerly Agip, will be aligning themselves with Team Enston. And why do I find this fascinating? ENI was with the team back in 2000, so this is just history repeating itself. And despite being in his mid-70s, Briatore clearly has plenty of ideas, and one might involve a certain Argentinian whose rise to the top tier of single-seater racing could be a beacon of hope for a country which is going through unprecedented economic hardship. His story is fascinating, pure escapism for the people of Argentina, but more on that subject later, because I just wanted to make it clear in the here and now that I am not dunking on Franco Colapinto specifically. I'm just more talking about the idea that whatever they were thinking in installing Jack Doohan that early, it was clearly a bad idea, a folly, an impulsive decision from Briatore, really flexing his muscles right from the get-go when he took over the role at Alpine. But at least, hey, there's no more Bruno Faman there. That guy was terrible. Right now, I believe that with Briatore's directives and Oaks executing them on the daily, Alpine has bounced back to its 2023 form despite a difficult 2024. It seems that Renault also is loosening its grip, giving the duo more freedom to redefine the team, whether to eventually sell it or to hand over a majority stake to new management. In any case, how Flavio Briatore defines a Formula One team is very much harking back to the old school ways of going about things, and that in turn could easily be a bitter pill to swallow for any brand new fans to Formula One who's yet to experience some real old school smatterings in real time. And old school F1 driver himself, Juan Pablo Montoya, got me thinking and helped crystallize my feelings for today's video. And I shall tell you what he said because I think the Colombian has a point here. And it's not against Colapinto at all. It's more to do with Formula One getting a little bit addicted. Ahem. The difficult thing about Doohan is that from the outside, it seems like the decision has already been taken. I think it will happen. I think Formula One saw how important Colapinto's impact is, and Formula One in the background is already helping for that to happen. That is super interesting. We were talking about the opportunities at Alpine, the drivers in the academy, the drivers in F2 and F3, very good drivers. Franco was at Williams in the Williams Academy and suddenly has a chance to race now. Now, none of those drivers in F2 will get the seat. It will be Franco. Yes, indeed, Juan. It is super interesting. In fact, it brings to mind a couple of years ago that really weird conspiracy theory about Red Bull being told by Liberty Media to sign up Lando Norris or Charles Leclerc next to Max Verstappen just for the sheer drama of it all. Nothing came of that, it was never proven, but the fact that it even went around was incredibly wild. Yeah, as we would all go like, yeah, I could see Liberty doing that. But Montoya's words capture his frustration. That raw talent and grit that saw him get a spot with Williams 25 years ago now either seems to be rushed in through other external means or overlooked entirely when money comes into play. And I do get where Montoya is coming from here, that he's having struggles with his son Sebastian Montoya trying to get into Formula One. after a really tricky divorce from the Red Bull Junior team. So yeah, I can see Juan Pablo's being a bit salty here, but at the same time, I think he has a point amongst the general consensus. And it also really subscribes to the idea that actually saw him quit the sport in 2006, because yes, Juan Pablo Montoya quit Formula One at the height of his powers, at the peak of his potential. He left of his own accord and made way for Lewis Hamilton because he got sick and tired of the internal politics of McLaren under Ron Dennis. They did not get on at all. And also Bernie Ecclestone. He thought it was all too aggravating. It wasn't really getting to the crux of racing, so that's why he went back to the USA and did what he did and found some relative success. And I think in this case, he does have a point, albeit with some personal interest in these comments, but thankfully, there might be more substance indeed behind this take than even Juan expected, since I do believe Alpine are wanting to manifest the idea of Franco Colapinto's ascent, with at least maybe some data to back it up. At least it's not all about the money, although it is mostly about the money. But the main thing I want to bring up here is that this whole situation regarding Jack Doohan needn't have happened had Flavio Briatore not rushed the decision to replace Esteban Ocon with a driver he manages personally. This was a folly on the Italian's part. So honestly, they should have just waited, and then Franco would have arrived, they could have signed him up instantly, and sure, we would have all been a bit sad that Jack didn't get an opportunity, but it really would have just been yet another Alpine Academy driver being overlooked. We would have moved on with our lives. I make no bones about it, Flavio used his newfound authority to give his academy standout first dibs, which might finally mean the academy is doing its job. But considering the driver market was still wide open last August, locking him in then was risky. Things changed quickly when Franco arrived at Monza. He nearly missed out on points in an under-upgraded Williams, only to then score soon after, bringing the world to a collective climax. And buyer's remorse set in. Overall, I would rate Flavio Briatore's stewardship of Alpine being a relatively solid venture, but this whole idea of appointing Jack Doohan this early, that was a huge and absolutely embarrassing gaffe. Not to mention incredibly unfair for the Australian. You should not be giving this guy hope if you had no real plans or no real commitment to actually stick to your word and not be like a magpie and just go, ooh, interesting new driver. What this all tells you is that even though Oliver Oakes is wearing the moniker of team principal, this is not his team to run, really. This is Flavio's team, once more, because he brought Renault success, and Renault want more success if they want to have any sort of relationship with Formula One going forward, even if not a power unit supplier. We're about to see more and more old school power plays coming around that some new fans might find incredibly bitter pills to swallow. But this isn't anything new, because back in the 1990s and even before then, driver changes happened all the time, with the likes of Martin Brundle and Aguri Suzuki. Yes, that Aguri Suzuki of Super Aguri fame. At Ligier in 1995, they would be swapped out almost every single race for contractual purposes. It was incredibly volatile. I mean, one of the biggest upsets in terms of driver transfer history was that of Jordan's Bertrand Gachot being arrested after a bust-up with a London cabbie. If that had not happened, and the winds of change hadn't happened unexpectedly, we wouldn't have seen Michael Schumacher make his debut at Spa in the way he did. These things can happen. And what happened with Logan Sargent being replaced by Franco Colapinto? This was just yet another one of these winds of change. Somebody had to try and grasp that wind and now trap that wind in one place, and hopefully, next to the right person, it'll be a gas. But in the case of Doohan, if his presence is no longer in the interest of Flavio Briatore or for the Alpine team that he is supervising, the fact the latter manages the former will no longer be the deciding factor in him staying in the seat, because of the now infamous, "The only thing we can be sure of though is death," quote, rearing its ugly head once more. But at the same time, to be fair to Franco, his little dabbling of Formula One last year wasn't just a media sensation, although it is a big part of it. It was indeed a revelation. Because despite him being thrown into a really underpowered and neglected car development-wise, he adapted quickly, scoring points and showcasing the concept that if a driver clicks with a particular car, regardless of the power output, he can work wonders with that impressive racecraft. He wasn't just a financial asset, he was a genuine competitor. But at the same time, if you think I want Jack to be booted out immediately with no cares, you're wrong. They made this deal up, they have to stick through it. If they completely get rid of him, even earlier than the Miami Grand Prix, then this is just yet another example that goodwill will be simply evading them, no matter how hard they're trying to copy the McLaren rule of suddenly turning things around akin to 2023, which is exactly what they're trying to do. Just make no mistake, they're copying McLaren's homework book. And I understand that some briatore and Alpine fans will be just going, well, wait a minute, Lord. No, they're trying to be fair here. They're doing so many tests with Jack Doohan and Franco and Pierre. They're trying to get as much data as possible. Yes, I do agree with that. Alpine has been somewhat fair in making use of their really comprehensive TPC program by giving Franco, Jack, Pierre, and others some time with classic Alpine and Renault machinery, but at the same time, you've only got to look with what Flavio is doing when it comes to social media. He is very much lavishing so much attention on Franco. It's not every day that a reserve driver gets this level of social media coverage, what with Franco sporting a rather interesting and somewhat similar jumper to what I have in my wardrobe. I appreciate that guy's taste in jumpers, I will admit. And him next to that car, it's clear that they want to make use of the money that they spent to try and acquire his services for the next 5 years. That's through the rest of the decade. Even as a reserve driver, that level of commitment is... You don't do that anymore. 1, 2, multi-year deals at best, usually 3. So yes, whilst it appears that briatore is wanting to rely on objective data from multiple tests, the broader interests of F1, especially under Liberty Media, might want to continue to prioritise growth in the South American market, something that they've been bereft of prior to now. You see, this interest from Argentina and now Brazil, with thankfully them being represented in the sport once more with Sauber's Gabriel Bortoleto to boot, is brand new for the American entertainment titan. Now, okay, I know that some of you might suddenly go, well, wait, they took over in 2017. Felipe Massa was still knocking around with Williams. That is absolutely true. Massa was just about thinking about retirement until Valtteri Bottas got the call up from Toto saying, Valtteri, I need to put you in the car because Nico has forsaken me. But it was clear that his time in F1 had really passed, and interest in the sport was nowhere near as hype as it was when the Brazilian was at his peak around the late 2000s. Now though, with Franco and Gavi, the hype is back, and in a way which has unlocked huge potential for rapid growth, which more than goes to explain why the F1 exhibition is moving from London, which I actually went to, and you can check out the video of me showcasing it up top, to Buenos Aires in Argentina. Surely that must strike you as being a little bit obvious that, hey, maybe Formula One likes Franco and they want a bit more of him. Now again, I'm not dissing Franco. This is a very sound business decision, and I'm pretty sure that Franco will be showcased and there for the launch event when they actually debut it. There might even be a little bit of a segment about talking about Formula One's future, Franco being there, hopefully being able to emulate the success of, say, Carlos Reutemann, or maybe Juan Manuel Fangio in the fullness of time. Albeit that is a bit of a tall order, considering that Max Verstappen exists. At the same time, though, the exhibition's existence in Argentina kind of proves Montoya right. That these days, raw talent has to be backed up with huge financial incentives, and not only does Alpine find solace in that notion, but also the sport itself. It got a taste of this further last year with Franco's 9-race stint with Williams, and I imagine it wants more. And Flavio Briatore wants that because, well, it's his job to make sure that Alpine is in the best condition possible, because that's why Renault brought him back, to make sure the team was turning itself around and actually a competitive operation, which it demonstrated with Gasly getting quite a few top 5 finishes in the final few races of the season, and Esteban Ocon bowing out with the 2nd place in Brazil. Yeah, credit where credit's due here. What he is doing is working. I mean, it's not exactly orthodox the way he's going about things, nor is it proper in this day and age, but it's getting results, and that's all Renault cares about, if it thinks about selling the entire team lock, stock and barrel. And I'm not saying Franco doesn't deserve to be in Formula One. He clearly has unfinished business in this sport, and 9 races is simply not enough to cast judgment, which makes it all the more important for Jack to be honoured all of the allocated time he has been given to prove himself. But, to give Franco credit, his case is a compelling one. He does deserve a little bit more time in the car, and I really hope that he can have some more time to learn a thing or two in maybe 2026 when everything changes, that Jack actually gets his contract honoured throughout the entire season. I'm liking what I'm hearing from Franco in being introspective and thoughtful about what happened in his tenure with Williams. That yes, many things were contributing to why he crashed out in Brazil, because that was the first time in the wet, on Inters, the team didn't listen to him, and he was really trying to fight for his life there, but at least now he is taking full responsibility for what happened in Vegas. He is owning that, and realising that he made a call, it was the wrong one, which is why I'm really surprised that Christian Horner didn't take him in, because simply, he likes to give it a go. But hey, I respect Franco for taking responsibility. And granted, I respect the Italian team principal wanting to at least appear like he is giving Doohan a fair chance to prove himself, what with the multiple tests in old Alpine machinery, both next to Colapinto and Gasly, not to mention the deal that Briatore struck to get Franco over to Alpine in the first place, with Williams' James Vowles to ensure that Colapinto would be secured a seat in Formula One for the future. And I bet you weren't thinking I was going to be talking about Williams today and how much this has benefited them in the long run as well, because, as I said yesterday, they can appear now just about anywhere. What? As we saw with the gaffe he had surrounding Mick Schumacher, calling him nothing special, and then having to backtrack it and clarify why he said that, Vowles tends to wear his heart on his sleeve a little too often than a typical team principal should. It also indicates his relative naivety in the role, and I'm not dissing him. This isn't a skill deficiency or anything, it's just an experience deficiency, and that will change with, well, experience. And we all know his situation with Carlos and how he, again, tends to wear his heart on his sleeve and say how much he loves Carlos. He's secured one of his academy drivers a future in Formula One. Argentina will not forget that. They will probably build memorials to James Vowles. And this is the most important thing. Even though Williams finished 9th in the Constructors, getting this $15 million from Alpine, one of their competitors, means that them finishing 9th is effectively them finishing 8th in the Constructors with gaining more prize money, having not lost any wind tunnel time, which might help them in this really close battle in the midfield. This was a good deal for James to make, not only financially, but making sure that one of their academy stars actually gets on the grid. It is a W for Williams, but at the same time, it does prove yet again Montoya is right. There is a vested interest from multiple parties in keeping Colapinto around, because whilst Vowles' view on Franco is substantial and backed up with data from Williams themselves, because otherwise they wouldn't have put him in the car in the first place to replace Logan Sargent, I can easily imagine that Williams will appreciate the continued support from Argentina, the additional merch sales from its presence, as well as the restoration of goodwill for the team after bungling the situation with Logan earlier in the year, and of course them getting additional views on their YouTube channel. That being said, there is an onus on Briatore to make good on this deal. Because after all, Renault would ideally not want to be considering throwing cash at the development of a driver that they're not going to be using anytime soon, especially if Renault is planning to sell up a majority stake in the team and only remain as a small investor. Just that means they've got some skin in the game. They want to see results right now to make sure that Briatore's experiment is working. And after Briatore's mistake of signing Jack on far too early than was ideal, because Franco arrived just a week later after Penn dried up on Doohan's contract, yeah, something has to give. Also, Franco should be given some room to breathe, find himself with the Alpine car that involves plenty of track time away from the media, which I think right now is going well. Fine. If the rumours are true, and they say that Colapinto in tests is maybe between 2 to 5 tenths faster than Doohan, something I'm gonna get the... actually, maybe... No, I'll be debuting the spanner of speculation! And how much speculation? That much. But Jack should get a fair shout in the flyaway races to show what he can do in an actual race environment. And from what I've seen from him in interviews with media outlets, I congratulate him for not giving in to the doubt and speculation too early, and determined to prove his manager right for installing him in the seat next to Pierre so early on. That's a commendable stance for the young Aussie to have. But there is a huge, enormous chasm for him to traverse in the next couple of months, for him to survive the storm of hype that is around Franco Colapinto and his fan base, which, quite frankly, is so intense that it gives Team LH and the Lecfosi a run for their money. And according to some reports, Jack Doohan was put in the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix in the final race after Esteban Ocon was dropped after Qatar to corroborate with all of the testing data in old Alpine cars they had on Jack, since, according to their data, he has the most experience on an F1 circuit at Abu Dhabi. And considering where Jack finished, yeah, he finished the race without crashing, but in comparison to others, and also Colapinto when he was around before Piastri took out his front wing, it's not looking great thus far. It wasn't a really stellar debut, but again, let's wait to see what happens with the A525 at Melbourne, his home race. If he can do well there, hopefully the momentum goes upwards. But I think it's quite safe to say that even though Franco Colapinto wants his raw talent to be the main thing that bolsters his campaign in Formula One, financial reasons will be one of the biggest contributing factors, whether he likes it or not. Now, okay, I'm going to have to bring up the spanner again here, and, you know, the speculation won't be quite as wide here, but it's very true, because preseason testing, that's quite a big sign as to where things go, because, well, they've got the brand new cars there. They've got 3 days to test them, 1.5 days per driver. These lineups don't get announced until maybe 2, 3, 4 days before the testing begins, so we've got some time to ruminate and, of course, speculate. But if Alpine choose to run Colapinto for half a day, and at the same time of day as Doohan, that'll be turning the chatterings into a full-blown cacophony. That would be a huge detriment to Jack and the little time drivers have to prepare for the first race in Melbourne. This is all rarefied time. That is clearly a sign that they are going to be doing one more like-for-like comparison. Franco can't do FP1 sessions because he's done 9 races. He won't be able to have any other opportunity to run the A525 in anger in a live session against Jack Doohan. This will be the ultimate test, and if Jack's times at a similar time of day to Franco are not far well enough to justify a longer period with the team next to Gasly in a full campaign, then they're going to make that call. Unless Jack scores points and proves in an actual race environment he can match Gasly or beat Gasly, and then that means that Gasly is the one in trouble. Because come on, Pierre's got a huge fan base. Why would you get rid of him? This will be something to keep an eye on, my friend, because remember, these lineups only get announced just maybe 48 hours before the testing begins. I am really starting to think that Montoya's comments do have legs, and even though you can say, well, he's got some reasons to be cynical and jaded with Formula One with his own experiences and the fact that his boy isn't getting anywhere fast to Formula One, it really wouldn't surprise me that Liberty Media have got the South American bug. They want more of it, and if they can have 2 South American drivers instead of just 1, then all the better, and all the richer. And yeah, the F1 exhibit there, I do think it's a good idea. It's more tangible and easier to implement than maybe talking about an Argentinian Grand Prix, because we're hearing about that all the time. But either way, I do think Franco should be remembered for his talent more than how much money he comes with from Argentinian companies. I feel that's gotten completely lost, that Franco does have potential. He can click in an F1 car. He should be remembered and recognised for that, more than just all the people and sponsors behind him. And even though I am seeing what the team principal, Flavio is doing in trying to give him as many test opportunities as possible, both Franco and Jack, to see what he can do, the fact is, though, he is paying much more attention to Franco. I don't think he's realising this. No matter what he does, whether he puts in Franco earlier or keeps Jack throughout the year, he's just going to be undermining at least one of his decisions, bringing in Franco as a reserve and then not using him in the first opportunity, or putting in Jack too early and then dropping him, and then what was the point of even him being a manager? Being a manager, you're supposed to afford your drivers opportunities, and then you'd be taking it away. So this had better work, Flavio. And speaking of not wanting to undermine previous decisions, Christian Horner has gone through something similar when he realised that his plan to motivate Checo was a bad one, and that 2025 might be a more open-minded affair for him and Red Bull. To find out why I think Red Bull will be far less muddled and much more straightforward next season in terms of what they tell the media, watch this video next straight after this one, because they gotta, because otherwise Max will walk.